Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show.
What happened to your knuckles?
Oh,
Your left, yeah.
that one? Bruised.
Yeah.
Sandbag.
Yeah, I see that.
Sandbag picking up today. That's from the sandbag. Yeah, I sent a video to Craig. I found the key to training strong woman.
What's that?
You don't do anything for 5 years. You don't do a thing, and then you decide to register for a contest 4 weeks later and then train.
So this is what you've done. This sounds exactly like what my husband does all the time.
Yeah.
Only not strongman, just soccer league, running.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, I decided to enter into a contest because Ross is doing it, and I went to the website to see what the events were and what the weights were for him, and then I looked at the weights for the women, and I went, "Oh, I can do that." I think I can do that. And I'm looking, and I'm looking at the weights again, going, "Really? Because I'm just so used to our contest. So I'm the only one in my weight class right now. So I win.
What's the contest? Yeah, I win.
I win. It's at a place in Westminster called The Gym.
Uh-huh.
And it's the first of 4 events, 4 strongman contests. Unfortunately, it's July 4th weekend, which is why there's only one of me in the weight class and another woman. And then they're guys. It's a strongman contest, with the women's division, of course.
It's funny.
Again,
it's funny that out of the blue you decided to do that. Just because you're not going to be able to be in the strong woman.
I can't do my own
city because you're running it. So you're like, I'm doing my own elsewhere.
I can't do my own contest. I haven't done one since 2016. And I kind of thought I was done. And then I look at the numbers and I'm like, I can handle that. And sure enough, I'm putting up more weight than I've ever put up with the log. And I'm picking up sandbag. So I trained with the 150 and then I made it 170 today. And that's why I picked up one time. I got it up one time, 170. But the 150, 6 years ago, what's this, 2021, 2015 was when we were working on a sandbag carry, and it was 150 pounds, and I could not pick that bitch up to save my life. We all struggled with the sandbag. It was so awkward to us, right? So heavy. And then 2 weeks ago, I was like, well, let me see if I can pick up these sandbags. And I went 100 and then 125 and then there's the 150 and just picked it right up.
Dang, Emily.
I surprised myself. Let me tell you, I surprised myself. I thought, this is what it means when we say we train for strength and make it very specific with your training. And and that's what it is. 5 years, 6 years later, I can pick up that sandbag and it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. So, and I definitely had ups and downs with my training because of my knee surgery and everything. So that was very cool just to experience that for myself. It's like, there's something to this strength training thing.
Yeah.
If you're consistent,
no joke.
If you're consistent, you actually do build strength over time, even if your program changes, even if you have months where the training's not that great and you have to do alternate training, modalities in order because just something's injured or something doesn't feel right or you have a knee surgery.
Or a gym is closed.
Because there's a pandemic, and then all of a sudden, but you realize how much strength you actually have built. And there's skill to picking up the sandbag, but you've taught people how to pick it up. You know how to pick it up yourself. So but it's not so much that's just practice. That's practice picking up that sandbag. The strength has been built. So being able to walk into a contest kind of like that is very it's very fun. It's giving me something to train this month. As all my weights have gotten to a point where they're kind of they're heavy and I'm trying to figure out where to go with my program. It's nice to kind of have a little bit of a breather.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm taking for the next 2 weeks, I'm doing a breather. not worrying about like hitting a couple singles with my heavy squat, you know, working on the log, taking a break from pressing. So just to kind of practice with that and then get back on track. So it's kind of come at the right time. And it's just me and one other woman. So we'll have some fun. As long as they don't cancel it. But even if they cancel, let's say they cancel, they say, you know, there are not enough women registered. We can't run it with just you guys. That's cool. That's okay, because I've discovered something about myself. So, you know, I feel really happy and confident with, you know, with where my lifting is, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I think. And I think that's something important to remember. On the bar may not be where you want them to be because of things that have happened over, you know, the years or whatever. All of a sudden there's certain things, certain skills that you've acquired, and you can all of a sudden pick up a sandbag that weighs 150 pounds that you struggled with 5 years ago, and now it seems so much easier. Like, how come I couldn't do this 5 years ago? Or put more weight over your head, you know, with a really awkward object. And you're like, oh, I guess all that pressing I've been doing lately is paying off. You rediscover, you realize, like, as long as you're consistent with your training, and even if the training goes, you know, off the rails, as long as you continue to do something, you're making progress.
Yeah.
Which this kind of leads right into what we want to talk about today, doesn't it?
Yeah. Remind me. I forget what we want to talk about today.
Listening to your body.
Right. Gotcha.
Listening to your body and following and being flexible with your program.
Versus strictly following the program.
Yeah. So I think we started talking about this already. So I think let's keep talking. So we want to talk today about just that, listening to your body and having flexibility with your program when things may not be working so well, when things, you know, are kind of going awry, maybe when you've had an injury or work's been really crazy. So Rebecca, you want to jump in on that? Because I think that was something that it was a hot topic that you came up with, which is great, because I think we probably talked a little bit about this, but maybe we haven't gone into detail or.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess there's a lot of situations where somebody might have, like, they've got the program, they know what they're supposed to do, depending on a person's experience level or familiarity with lifting.
Right.
They might be really reluctant to not do what's written down on the program. Like, I've had clients who feel like, I don't know, they're letting themselves down, letting me down, not living up to fill in the blank, I don't know whose expectations.
Right.
If they aren't able to do what was written down as the program. Right. And there's a million reasons why a person might show up to a gym on a particular day and not be able to do what's written down on the program. Like, it might be sort of like a nagging building injury that just that day is unmanageable. It might be, I don't know, stress or lack of sleep or poor nutrition making a lift that would have been difficult practically impossible on that day. It might be, I have this a lot too, and I don't know if this is like a totally other topic, but like a lot of times not only with myself, but with clients who, when they're traveling and are lifting in an unfamiliar environment, are just distracted maybe to a level where they're not able to do the lift, or they end up doing something incorrectly, tweaking something. So like travel, different gym situations, lifting at a different time of day even. A lot of times can do that for people. And being like, having enough flexibility and being graceful enough with yourself to be able to be like, you know what, today's not my day. I'm not, I'm going to do what I can today, and I'm going to live to fight another day. I'm not going to like push this to the point where I am unable to lift, the next session.
Right.
And that sometimes it's a hard lesson to learn.
Absolutely.
I've had a hard time learning that lesson.
Absolutely.
Like, I remember when I was getting started, there was one time my belt was not on properly, was digging into my ribs, and I was on like maybe rep 3 of my squat, and like tears were streaming down my
Mm-hmm.
face because
Mm-hmm.
I was in so much pain, but I felt like I wasn't supposed to stop. I had to finish this set. Then I end up like screwing up an intercostal muscle, and I was
Right.
like, oh, okay, now I get it. I should listen to my body.
Yeah.
Those extra 2 reps were not worth it.
It's you know, and it's very, I mean, we've you know, we've said this many times. It's very individual, right? There's so many people who are really flexible with their program. Like, whatever, you know, I'm not doing this today. And they're like, they're totally cool with that. It doesn't bother them changing their program up, coming in, having missed a week. It's like, what am I doing today? Okay. And it's like just there because they're there. Maybe they're you know, they enjoy training. They enjoy being at the gym. They understand it's good for them, but they're not going to be really, you know, it's not their life. They're not obsessed with like, I have to stick to this program. And then there are other individuals who, you're right, it's that disappointing somebody. If I don't do this, I'm going to disappoint my coach. I'm going to disappoint Emily. Rebecca's going to say something. I know she's going to say something about me. And that's something that they're making up in their own head, because it's not that.
But I think also there's a lot of conversation about the difference between exercise and training.
Right.
And I think that's, you know, like that is a good distinction, right? It's an important distinction, but I think in situations where a person might be better off to listen to their body if they're filled with a lot of ideas of like, no, I follow a program, I don't exercise, so I do what's written on the program. I don't come in and do willy-nilly whatever I happen to on a whim feel like doing today.
Right.
And that's a point of pride for people to be following a program as opposed to just exercising. And so like you're kind of describing somebody who maybe falls into the category of more like, oh, sure, I don't care, I'll do whatever today. And I think it's the people who have like people with like a perfectionist streak, people with like people pleasers, people who have really bought into the idea that they are following a program, that they're training, not exercising. These are the people where it's, I think, a lot more difficult for them to be able to be like, okay, that's not what I'm doing today.
And I'm saying, I mean, even I have clients who, you know, there are those who really want to stick to what is on that piece of paper, right? It's important to them. And then there are those who they have their program, they know what to do, but you know, if something doesn't feel right, they're not going to push themselves. They're going to tell me straight up, I'm really tired today. I'm only going to this weight today, or I'm going to repeat from last week. And I usually, I'll say, fine, no problem. I know my clients well enough. I know my members well enough to like, no, I can say to somebody, no, we're going up today. You got this. And someone else, I can say, perfect. So it's interesting. I think the person who's less obsessed with that rigidity doesn't know how to listen to their body. Whereas the person who isn't obsessed with that rigidity knows how to listen to their body. You know, like they know, I'm not feeling it today. I'm going to wait till, you know, tomorrow to do something, or I really can't, I'm not going to push myself today because I didn't get too much sleep last night. It's very interesting. Someone else will push themselves, even if they didn't get enough sleep, because the program says, and I have to force that person to not do it. I'm watching them, I'm seeing they're really struggling today. And I ask, what's going on? Oh, I got 4 hours of sleep. I'm like, then you're not going to push and do, 405 today. But doesn't matter what it says. Doesn't matter what you did last week. Today we're going to take some weight off the bar. And you can see the disappointment in their face, but then they do it and they realize, oh yeah, you were right. I really don't feel up to it today. I thought though, because it says, and it's like, no. You need to be able to listen better to what's going on and understand recovery is important. Eating is important. So it is that fine line of that person who's so hell bent on training today doesn't know how to listen as well as somebody who's just, less rigid about what's on that in that log.
Well, and it's hard too, even with like, I'm just thinking about like this week, like even with myself, even with probably yourself, right? Like even with somebody who has some experience or background listening to their body, but like always trying to, figure out that balance, because like there are plenty of times, especially over this past year, where I've basically been lifting by myself in my basement. where I just don't even feel like it. But I know that a lot of the I don't feel like it, or my body is giving me these indications, a lot of that is like me just being in a funk. You know, so like, I guess totally why I texted you. I hate heavy squat day. And then I went ahead and squatted more than I have squatted in the last year and a half. Right. And then afterwards I was like, dang, now I feel good. I'm glad I did that. Right. Like, I'm glad I got my little, bitched on the text to Emily, did my thing, kept going. But it's like trying to figure out that balance is hard for people, and it just takes practice. It takes and knowing what your hangups are, or what your issues are, because like I know people who can lift perfectly fine on 4 hours sleep, and other people that kills them. Like if I have very little sleep, that's not going to affect me as much as, say, oh my God, all the stress from like our breeding goats, right? Like that affects me in a different way than, a lack of sleep. So kind of, it's all a process. It's all very individual, and it's a process of learning about yourself. That's always worthwhile. What you can manage, what you can't, what situations you need to pay attention to and maybe pull back, what factors, kind of affect you more than other people, or which ones don't affect you at all. Like when it's sort of a mental game that you have to trick yourself into doing the lift that you don't want to do that day. And when it's really important to be like, no, something doesn't feel right. Or, I don't know.
Yeah. I have a client, I'm thinking back, this is a few months ago. I think I might've mentioned this on one of the podcasts. One of my clients was squatting, and she was pretty busy at the gym. So she didn't get a rack that had spotters. She got one of the squat stands. So she was squatting heavy, and she decided to, what did she do? I think she repeated the weight. I wasn't around. For some reason, I must have been busy doing something, so she couldn't consult me. So I was watching her squat from afar finally at one point, and she looked really good. I came over to her and I said, these are great. And she goes, oh, they're 5 pounds less than what I did last week. That's what it was. She was supposed to do a repeat, I think doing more reps, let's say. So she took off just 5 pounds from her heavy squat, because she didn't have the spotters. And she said, I took off 5 pounds. I hope that's okay. I said, 5 pounds is nothing. I mean, 5 pounds for like a bench or a press is something. 5 pounds for like a squat is not that's that much. And she did like 4 reps. She wasn't confident to do 5. She goes, I hope that was okay. I said, that's absolutely okay. You're over here. There are no safeties. You're squatting heavy. It's nerve-wracking already, and it's busy. And you had the fortitude to just take a little bit off and do, at least something, and then keep going. So I said, yes, it was nice to see. Like she had the flexibility with herself to say, okay, I'm not going to do the weight I was supposed to do because I'm a little nervous about not having anything, around me. And I think I can manage 5, and she ended up doing 4. But it was that kind of like, I hope that's okay. And I don't know what she was expecting me to say. No, it's not okay. The program called for this, and you will do this, or you
get that drill sergeant personality.
Exactly. But that's not. I was thrilled that she did something, that she did that, and that she only took such a little bit of weight off. But she still felt like that was just, I was comfortable doing this, but I wasn't comfortable doing, I think it was like 145, but she wasn't comfortable doing 150 for whatever reason. And, the 150 was like a big deal because that was heavy. Now she's, squatting a lot more than that. But, having
it's
that,
funny what arbitrary numbers we set up as being like heavy. Yeah.
And so that comes to a point that we haven't talked about yet, which is, you were mentioning like your clients, and, they have you as a coach, but they have you as an online coach. So they're kind of getting you after the fact.
Yeah.
And then exactly. I have the opportunity to work with my members like in person, like right then and there. And then having to have the conversation of being flexible. They come in, they can speak to me right away before they even start lifting. Here's what's going on with me. What do you suggest? Or maybe they don't speak to me. I see them later and they're struggling. And then I have to go up and have that conversation. And they said, well, but the program said, or, I I felt like I still could do it. And then we have to have the conversation of, you know what, if you're not feeling fantastic, definitely try to, come see me first. Talk, let's figure it out together, because we may have to make some changes today, and that's okay. Nothing's like, it's not written in, it's there should be, you need to have some flexibility within that program. It's not set in stone. It's a piece of paper, and it's just writing, and it's just numbers, and they can change. Especially when people are like, they've missed a week for, vacation, or they traveled with family somewhere for an event, or, they were sick. We have to make some adjustments.
Or even like people, a lot of times, I've got one guy whose work schedule kind of keeps changing. So like if he's able to work from home, he can do his lift at a particular time, like over his lunch break at home, whatever. If he has to go into the office, he ends up doing his lift at like 8 or 9 p.m. That makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
After commuting and working the full day.
You mentioned like the time of day. I mean, Diego on holidays when we're open, and I'm only open in the morning, I mean, he has to figure out when's he going to go in, because he cannot lift in the morning. So
he has to figure out when to eat and what to eat.
He's got to figure out.
I bet you that throws him for a loop.
It makes him crazy. It makes him crazy. He'd rather just.
I'm imagining this. It's actually very humorous.
I think he'd rather just me be closed that day, because then he can just go at the regular time, right? That he usually goes.
Choices.
It's terrible, but he cannot train before noon. Or if he does, he always says, I've got to do a real light workout today. It's got to be something pretty light for me, because he knows himself. He can't push himself at like 10 o'clock in the morning. That's just not him.
I'm the exact opposite.
Right?
If it gets to 1 o'clock and I try and lift, I'm like, this is just.
And that's something I have to tell people too. Like if they come in, let's say they've been training in the evening for, months, and then all of a sudden something changes and they've got to come in the morning. And they realize like morning just sucks for them. I was like, we have to have some flexibility until you either get adjusted to the morning, or it's just for this week that you have to train in the morning. Let's figure out what's going to work best for you, because it's not the time of day that person really, is used to. Maybe they've had troubles in the past, and they're just not a morning person, right? There's some people who can lift at 4:30 in the morning, and that's great. Good for them. That's not me. 10 o'clock is probably about the earliest I can. That's pushing it. 10. I'm good at like 11 o'clock, probably 11 on. But there has to be flexibility there too. So you're like you said, it's teaching people. It's learning. It's a learning process. Understanding that it's not going to be the same all the time. You have to be able to have that flexibility with yourself, and know that you're still making progress. You're still being consistent with your training. It's not going to be this linear progression for the rest of your life.
Forever. Yeah. I mean, because I think, one of the things to me with like, the goal of starting strength to get you as strong as possible, as quickly as possible. The bit that gets left off is for as long as possible, right? So if the goal is not only to develop strength, but strength over time,
right?
Then, and you're keeping the big picture in mind, then, if you miss what was set out on your program 1 week, but you get it the next week or even the week after, and you keep going from there, you're always, and I guess, I think Diego talks about something like this at the end of most of your seminars. He sort of says, I'm not interested in your linear progression line being as steep as possible, right? I'm interested in it like extending for years, for as long as possible. So how do we make that happen? But then, I mean, I guess I'm thinking about one of the things that you said with the online coaching. Like I try and have conversations with people before we get to that point. Like, here are your guidelines.
Right.
Like, here are situations where, you might not be able to do what's written down, and like sort of talk people through that ahead of time. And I'm thinking, as you were mentioning that before, about my online clients who take that to heart, and my online clients who sort of more, buck up against those guidelines, like, hey, here are some situations where you might need to decide in the moment to pull back. And the clients that I have worked with in person, in addition to working with online, and the clients that I've worked with the most in person as well as online, are the ones that do that the best. the ones that are like, okay, she really does mean that I should pull things back today, and I'm gonna report back to her that I did, that I did that top set, or I did that first set, but I didn't have the other 2 sets in me, and so I pulled some weight off the bar and finished up at like, two more sets at 90%, or something like that, like. And it's a longer, slower process with people that I haven't worked with as much in person. And I don't know why that is. I mean, there's the messages that you or I deliver to people in person, but there's this whole other atmosphere of information, or stratosphere of information, like YNTDP or whatever, or you're being I hate this word, but you know what I'm thinking. You know what?
I know.
You're being a P word because you're not doing the program or whatever. And if people are hearing those messages and hearing what I'm saying, and they're trying to figure out, well, do I listen to my body, or does that mean I'm being a sissy, let's say?
I mean, it's that they talk, there's the grinding all the reps. We don't grind reps. I mean, there's a point to learning how to stay with a rep, like learning it's okay to learn to grind. It's fine to feel like, okay, that's heavy. That's what a heavy rep feels like on a bench or a squat, to a point where it's still safe, right? It's a grind, but everything's in place. It's just slow.
Yeah.
But then there's grinding all the time because the program calls for 5 reps, and I better do 5 reps. Not necessarily. Not if all of a sudden something's off that day, or your program needs to change and needs to change now. And that's hard with people who don't have a coach or even an online coach. And if someone to kind of help see that, like, we're getting to a place where I think we need to make some changes. Because a person will just keep going because the program calls for that. But the program may need to change. And it might be beyond that. You might have gone beyond that point now. So now we have to pull back. But that's where having someone help you comes in. And that's where, or learning, starting to learn on your own. That's the tricky part of on doing it on your own. Sure, that you can stick to a program for so long. And most people, it's not the technique that starts to, be the issue. It's just the fact that the program needs to change. Like it's only going to last for so long. It's like doing the linear progression for 10 years. No one does linear progression for 10 years. No one does starting strength for 10 years. If you've been doing starting strength for 10 years, you're not doing starting strength anymore. So it's and then it's learning, okay, well, what is that new program going to be? And then having the flexibility to back the weights down and know that things are going to change, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to this new rep scheme, or new exercises, if there are maybe new exercises that are added to it. So it's a real balancing act when you don't have someone to kind of refer to and help you. And then it's still a balancing act when you do have a coach, because there's that disappointment level. There's that disappointment. I have that with many of my clients who don't want to disappoint me, and I have to tell them to stop with that. There is no such thing as disappointing me. I'm the one who has to make sure that you're moving forward and not moving backwards. If you're moving backwards, I've done something wrong. I should have changed something a long time ago in your program. Or you're not telling me that you're running marathons every other day in addition to coming and doing strength training with me, right?
Don't even, because I had an online person who all of a sudden wasn't hitting any of, and I sort of cycle back, reset, blah, 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 still not hitting those. And I find out that the individual had started doing several hours of stationary cycling every day.
Yeah, that makes a difference. And that's something that you have to tell your coach. If, that happened with one of my clients who came in and completely failed his squat and had also dumped a bar 2 days before. And Diego's like, okay, you're dumping your bar. You shouldn't be doing that. You're nowhere near the place of having to dump a weight. That's what's going on. Well, it turned out he played soccer and basketball back-to-back days. And so he was just completely exhausted and he wasn't recovered. So I was like, these are things that we need to know because, and he was flexible. Like he was someone who said, I'm not squatting today. I'm like, no, you're not going to squat today. You're going to press. Okay. And understanding why, you're not recovered. We're not going to push you anymore because obviously it's not going to do any good for you. Because I want you rested for the next session and let's see how things are then. And then we have to figure out your week. What days are you training and what days are you playing your sport and how we can manage that. And he understood completely. Like it wasn't one of those hard-headed, like, I'm not going to give up X, Y, or Z. It was, got it. Didn't realize that was going to impact me as much as it did. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does. So there's that. There's that. There's doing other activities that may be interfering with your program. And that's fine. If you want to continue with those activities, that means we have to change some things with your strength training. I'm going to be working with one of my clients this weekend who wants to pull back on some of his training so that he can bike more this summer. It's summer. Loves to bike. Also swim in the pool. So he's smart enough to know that. He's been doing this for a long time. He understands he needs to pull back. How's he going to now program so he keeps making good progress, but he has the time to do these other activities, and he doesn't want one or the other to interfere with either activity. That's somebody who's thinking ahead. But we've coached him, and so he's learned that from us of what he can do and what he can't do. Yeah. So absolutely figuring out, what your clients are doing outside of their training programs. We're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. I mean,
I think it's also like a lot of times it's this like, I don't know, people denying their age or whatever. Like, oh, I can go do what I used to do 10 years ago and it shouldn't affect me.
Right.
Like we've talked about this before, clients who were like, oh, I didn't realize the yard work was going to kick my butt. Right. Like, yeah, that's an irritating and humbling lesson.
Yeah. And then they come in and they're like, wow, I can't do anything. And then maybe they're frustrated, but you say, that's okay. Not a big deal. As long as you as the coach, don't make a big deal out about it and help them, reprogram for that day, they're not going to be upset about it. They're not going to feel like they made a mistake. They're to blame. They disappointed you. There's a lot of that. There are plenty of my clients who could give a shit. Sorry. Whether they disappoint me or not, it's not even on their mind. And then there are many who really do. And I understand that because I'm a perfectionist and I never wanted to let down my teachers or my instructors. Right. So I totally get that. So I can empathize with them, but at the same time, I'm trying to kind of encourage them to not feel that way, that nothing they do is going to, make me mad or make me upset. They should be enjoying themselves when they're here. They should be working hard. They should want to do better. That's what we're striving for, but understand our limitations and understand that day just may be one of those off days. I had a client a couple weeks ago who couldn't get up a weight. It was a first time doing a new weight. And the week before he did, 5 pounds less for triple, like no problem. And he tried it twice, and it's one of my older clients. And I just said, hey, it's okay. Not your day. And, everything okay. And I could tell that something wasn't okay when he came in that morning. He said, actually, I've had a disagreement with one of my daughters and I'm still thinking about it. It's still on my mind. And sure enough, that's exactly what it was, because the next week flew off the floor. And then the week after that, a double. And the week after that, a triple. And it was completely like he was just so in another place. He couldn't be present. And having him understand to be flexible with himself, and that stress or, when something else is bothering you can certainly impact your training here. It can be a stress relief, but it can also be a stressor if there's something else that is on your mind or you're preoccupied with. You can bring that into the gym, and for whatever reason, it's going to impact how you're moving that day and how much strength you have, because your brain and your body really is kind of preoccupied with something else.
Yeah. Well, and I think people like to think about brain and body as being two separate things instead of part of the same organism. Like what happens in one place affects what happens the other. Like if your brain is distracted, like I'm talking about when people are on vacation, or like when you're
Yes.
talking about when your client has had a disagreement, or even just like distracted as in, like I had a client who wasn't able to, someone I'm working with in person, he wasn't able to lift with me last week because of work and extracurricular stuff that she's a track coach. And it was, I don't know, like some big track meet weekend. So she's lifting at really odd times, but she wasn't comfortable. Like we've worked together for a while. I showed her like how to get herself set up, everything by yourself. Here's how you do it. Show me how you're going to do it. All of this sort of stuff. But just like the mental piece of it, like being comfortable and confident on her own. I mean, she did lift, but I think, she pulled weight off the bar, and ultimately, right, that's fine, because it's not just, this is what the program says you have to do.
Right.
There's a process here of, I'm also trying to make her an independent lifter.
Right.
Someone who's able to do this on her own. And if becoming an independent lifter means that some of that weight on the bar gets pulled back so she can build the confidence to be able to do it by herself, that's fine. I'm looking at the long term.
Absolutely.
Right. So as strong as possible, as quickly as possible, for as many years as possible. And if we take some weight off so she builds that confidence, because the two you can't like toss a bunch of weight on a bar in a new situation and be afraid of the weight on the bar, afraid of the lift. You know, she's got to have a certain level of confidence. So that was good that she pulled that off and went ahead and did it anyway. The weight off.
It doesn't mean it's not going to come back on. It'll go back on when it's the right time, when the right place, when she feels like she can do it. That weight on that bar comes and goes. It comes off, it goes on, it comes off, it goes on. I mean, it's like, and it's just weight. It's just weight. It's just a piece of, it's like, it's iron plate that you put on and you take off. It's like, it doesn't define you. We talked about that before, about, the weight on the bar not defining who you are as a person, just like the weight on the scale, like you on the scale doesn't define you.
So see, I wonder about this though too, like the people that have a harder time, and myself included, especially, initially, right? But like having a hard time adjusting to changes in the program that one's individual circumstances that they might dictate as necessary. And I wonder like how much of that is tied to perfectionism and like feeling like a sense of control, like the idea that your body or a person's body could not cooperate with themselves on a particular day is frustrating, right? Like I'm not in control of this outcome to a certain degree, right? And so, I mean, that's whatever, a life lesson, but something that manifests a little bit, I think, in this scenario.
And it doesn't matter how old you are. I have 20-some-year-olds who are like that. I have 70-year-olds who are like that. I've got 40-year-olds. And then you've got plenty of people who they're so carefree about it. It's just, they're happy they're there. They're happy they can move, and I always say to people, are you grateful for the fact that you can do this? And some people, oh yes, no, you're right. The bigger picture, like looking at that bigger picture, we have to look at that big picture around, sometimes it's just because we can get so consumed with what we're doing and what we need to be able to do and what we should be able to do. Should, would, could. I had, one of my clients was sick last week. She had a cold and she came in on Monday, my couple in the morning. And I told her, I said, okay, we're going to do a heavy press today, but we're going to take a little bit of weight off the bar because you were sick. I can still hear it in your voice. You're still all stuffed up. And she's like, hemming and hawing, like, okay, I understand. And there was a disappointment of like, I got to take some weight off the bar. But she does it. She does the first 2 sets. She does 2 sets of 5 overhead press. So I look at her book and I say to her, I know we took some weight off the bar, but just, last time you did this weight, you only did it for triples. And then there was that realization of like, what? I said, you just did it for 2 sets of 5 and you're going to do it for 2 more sets of 5. So you went from doing 9 reps to 20 reps, and she had no clue. In her mind, she took weight off the bar, quote unquote. She's not as strong today as she was a couple weeks ago because she had this stupid cold. And yet she did way more reps. She had more confidence because it was lighter weight. You know, when it was that heavy weight, there wasn't the confidence. It was, oh my God, this is so heavy. Now it was, oh, it's weight off the bar. And it really wasn't that much weight that I took off, but it was for an overhead press. For a 60-some-year-old woman, it's, that's a lot. But it was that realization of, holy crap, I did what? I only did that for triples last time. And then, her husband's going, you're a beast. You're a beast. She's a beast. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. But there was that, and then there was that kind of realization as for me as the coach of like, I was able to say something, like give her that props. And it was that, oh my God, I did that for 5 reps. So the next time she goes up she's going to have the confidence to do the next set for 5 reps too, the next weight, where she's been struggling, but now she realizes how much strength she has. And could she have done more than that could she have repeated the weight from the week before? Maybe. But in my mind, I wanted to just, I wanted her to have a good session and be confident with the weight she could do. And it turned out that she actually hit, a reps PR with this weight that she'd done before. So there's that. There's, they have the flexibility with the program because I'm giving it to them. I'm making them okay with being flexible. When they didn't want to be
very flexible, and I'm making them okay.
Well, I know I am, but I'm making them feel like some days are going to come in. They're going to have to listen to me, because I'm listening to you. I'm thinking about like where you were, how you're feeling, how you're moving, I can tell right away when people are to come in where they're, whether they're going to need to have a little bit of a break today, or maybe we want to, push them a little bit more today. Just the minute they walk in that door, I can tell. So and then they start to learn for themselves, and they start to tell me when they come in, they go, you know what, didn't eat well today. What do you think I should do? And I usually say, well, warm up and see how you go. That's always my thing. Let's warm up and see what you do. If you get to that weight and it feels great, let's do it. If you get to this weight and you start to feel like you don't have it in you, then we're going to stop there and we're going to, do something, and then we're going to move on to, something else. And they usually walk out having had a really good session because they listen to themselves and they listen to me.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like we're kind of talking about like, RPE a little bit,
for those who don't know what RPE means, it means rate of perceived exertion,
which is now one of the tagged words.
Right.
So you can't use it, but I think it's helpful sometimes, but it's also a learning process, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you could, like you're talking about your lifter who had the cold, and maybe she could have done the heavier weight on the bar that was prescribed, right? So there's a lot of these words that make it sound like it's really bad if you don't do what you were prescribed. Like, oh my God, I'm not taking my medicine today. Right. I'm going to be worse off tomorrow, or all of these. So anyway, maybe she could have done it, and maybe that would have been like an RPE 9.5 versus what you're asking her to do. Maybe more like an RPE 8, which is still a good effort. That's still a heavy weight. But at the end of it, she's got a reps PR. She's built up some confidence. And then also, you got to think about one of the things that I think is helpful with RPE as people learn to use that is if you've got somebody who's consistently doing their lifts up in the 9.5 range, because that's the prescribed weight, and I'm following the program and I'm doing my LP and this is what I have to do today. Well, eventually you're going to end up with, you're going to have a higher risk injury as a result. Like you shouldn't be working up in that range for an extended period of time. And that's not what the linear progression is meant to do, but that's how people misinterpret it. And then when you talk about words like grind it out or those sorts of phrases, people get confused there too, because yes, like you said, there's a difference between sticking with a tough rep and doing something that is so compromised in terms of form, right? Because there's also different ways to talk about RPE. You could talk about RPE in terms of like, that felt like shit because I didn't eat today and I don't have the energy. And there's RPE, like form-based RPE, where your lifter might be like, oh, that didn't feel bad at all. But like their knees are caving in and the entire lifter barbell system is swaying from side to side. And I don't care if that didn't feel heavy to you.
Right.
That's an RPE 10 because you should not be lifting like that.
Right. That's we're not doing any more today with that weight. Like, we're done. But I'm supposed to do 2 more sets. Nope, you're not.
No, thank you.
You've reached your limit. We're going to stop that, and we're going to do something else. Or maybe we're not going to do anything today because you're gone. Like, you're done. That's it. We're finished. That's us being able to watch that and see that clearly. And then the person who's training on their own may not understand that that's not what they're supposed to be feeling every single time they lift. That's a really tricky.
Yeah. And I mean, I understand the argument against using RPE, right? Like, oh, for somebody who's just getting started, everything feels heavy. I understand that.
Yes.
But it's useful, and it's definitely worth, I think, educating lifters on what RPE is in terms of having a common language to talk about. I don't think I can lift this today, or my body says this, or I've got pain when I'm doing this, or that sort of thing.
Right.
You got to be able to have those conversations, like either in terms of, how your body feels, if you can talk about that in terms of RPE and have like some numbers to ascribe to it, or, pain and a VAS scale and that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, it's true. Everything feels heavy when you just start out. Of course it does. Because your brain hasn't gotten used to it.
Well, probably because a lot of people just starting out, like especially if they don't have a history or background lifting weights, like they just look at the weight on the bar. You tell them what the weight on the bar is, and just like in their head, they're like, "That's heavy."
Yeah.
Right? Like I had a woman when she started. She was like, she was so cute. Oh my gosh, and she was like, I forget, 75 maybe. She's really feisty, but she did not ever want me to tell her what the weight was before she looked at it, because she just didn't want to know. Because all of the weights were heavier than anything that she imagined she could lift. I'd tell her afterwards, she'd be like, "Oh my God," she'd say. It's very funny. That's
a whole other topic. That's a whole nother podcast to talk about. I do want to talk.
I amaze myself.
I think this is a quick story, and then I think it might be good to do it, for another time. But one of my clients, older client again, late 60s, deadlifted the other day, and it was this heavy deadlift, and he's moving so much better after he's been with me for about 4 months now, moving much better. Never really done a lot of training in his life. He's a retired surgeon. Kind of stooped a little bit.
Pathetic.
Yeah. And, so his deadlift position, he actually had a pretty damn good deadlift considering the fact that he really can't like squeeze his chest up, well, because of his back, but he keeps the bar on his legs. He uses his legs, he doesn't use his arm. I mean, from the beginning, he had a fairly good deadlift, and we deadlift on the floor now. We were deadlifting from mats, and he did his set, and then he stopped and he said to me afterwards, he goes, "How come I haven't hurt myself?" And I said, "Do you want to hurt yourself? I can make you hurt yourself if you want it." He's like, "Well, no." I said, "You're not hurting yourself because you're doing it correctly." And he was just like, he couldn't understand how he wasn't hurting himself with what I was giving him. I mean, he squats, he deadlifts, he benches, he does, modified presses. I mean, he does a modified bench. He does an incline bench. He uses a safety bar to squat because he can't, squat with a straight bar. So I've gotten him on a program. He's doing the program. It's modified for him to be able to meet his needs. But the deadlift he deadlifts from the floor. But he's like, "How come I haven't hurt myself?" And I'm like, "You're not supposed to hurt yourself." But every time he's ever gone to a trainer, he says he's always ended up hurting himself after a couple months. And this is the first time where nothing hurts. He's not, and I'm like, "Well, do no harm. I mean, you're a doctor, I follow the same motto." And like I said, that's probably a topic for, something else, but it's that here he listens to his body, because I know that he would tell me if something bothers him, because he does. If something bothers him, he tells me, we immediately stop that, or we drop the weight, or we change the exercise. And then I just check in with him. So, I think definitely older people are much more, ready to like tell you if something's bothering them. And they're very flexible when you say, fine, we'll do something else. Whereas somebody younger may not want to tell you, or if they do tell you, they still want to keep pushing it because they don't want to change. Because if they change, that means they're a failure. My older clients don't have that. They don't have that sense of failure, or well, I guess it depends on the older client. Because I do have one who is very much like, if he lets me down, it's like his whole world crashes down, or he feels like he's letting me down if he doesn't do something right. Whereas most of my other clients are just like, they could give a shit. As my mother said, I'm only here because you own this gym. If it wasn't for you, I'd be sitting home on my ass. So it definitely depends on the client, but most of the time my older clients are like ready to kind of go, you know what, you want me to back off? No problem. I will back off. But I do want to talk about like, why don't people hurt themselves sometimes when they're lifting, and, or that misunderstanding of like, well, I should hurt myself if I'm doing this type of work. And maybe that's a topic for another time about, what can occur, what you might feel like when you're doing this, but what you shouldn't be feeling. What is a sign that something's not right, and what is a sign that's just, it's, your body's doing something different. We may have talked about that in our pain podcast. I can't remember, but maybe that's something to kind of consider doing. Anything else you want to add to this today? I feel like we've kind of hit every nail.
Yeah.
It's, as always, it's individual.
It depends.
It depends, as always, it depends. But flexibility is important in your programming. Flexibility is important, and it has to be learned. It has to be learned. If you're working with a coach, your coach, is helping you. If you're training on your own, maybe, reaching out to people who also train. So you don't feel like you're alone in this, and ask them, what would you do in this situation? That's kind of what's nice about the Facebook page, different Facebook pages is people do ask, and they get, they get some decent responses from people. And it usually is, I do see a lot of people saying, hey, you should back it off, take some weight off the bar, what's your program look like? How, what else are you doing? So they're all asking oftentimes the right questions, about that. But nothing's set in stone. Don't think that just because it's written down and you have to follow it, if something doesn't feel quite right that week, that day, think about it first.
Yeah. I mean, and also I'm just like at the moment thinking about like just media and marketing around fitness in general, just in our culture, like any of the ads that you watch or, whatever, all have this sort of like go big or go home vibe to them.
No pain, no gain.
Yeah. No pain, no gain. Exactly. And,
yeah, no, that's not right.
Probably sell sneakers or whatever. But
no, I tell people I don't want you a sweaty mess on the floor. I mean, people are sweating right now. It's humid as crap in the gym, but I don't want you struggling to walk out of here. After
it's not the walking out of there, it's the walking the next day. It's like getting down the stairs the next day after like a heavy squat.
Yeah. But even still, I mean, I oftentimes, even after my heavy squats, I may feel my quads, but that's about it. Nothing. I'm not dragging myself up or down stairs. You shouldn't really be doing that, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I will do that from time to time. And then I'll be like, I probably need to change my program next week.
Yeah. So I think we'll wrap up there, everybody, with our listening to your body and following the program and having flexibility within that. We'll be back in a couple weeks. I think you're going on vacation, right? Next week?
We are.
Are you going to be training on vacation? Diego wanted to know.
This is very funny. Yeah. So last year we didn't end up going to Charleston because last year in June, pandemic, right? It was like confusing about what was safe travel or whatever, right. And we could postpone our rental, our house
Mm-hmm.
rental, to
Mm-hmm.
this year. So that's what we're doing this year. Not all the kids are able to go, like the cousins and stuff.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
a different group. But my nephews are already down there. They're like, oh, I can't find a gym. I'm like telling them, I'm like, dude, you want to check these 2 gyms out, right? Like, just stop even messing around with the Planet Fitness. What is wrong with you guys?
So you will be training. You'll be training now?
Yeah. So this time,
good.
I mean, I was sort of thinking, because last year when we went to the beach in New Jersey,
Right.
I just brought my kettlebells.
Right.
And kind of played around in the living room or the lawn or whatever with the kettlebells, and that was all fine. But now Sadie's lifting, and Sadie's like, you talking about like flexibility or rigidity? She is very rigid. She's very rigid with her program.
Doesn't surprise me.
And so she's like, no, Mom, I gotta lift. I gotta lift.
It's like, do I do push-ups today? Should I do them tomorrow? What should I do? Where do I do my push-ups? Yeah, that
would be fine. No, see, so the problem too, though, is like we both lift on Monday, but then I had originally set her up. I mean, it's like longevity lifting in the basement. We're both doing this by ourselves, like whatever. So we're on a 2.5-day program. Yeah. So there's no power clean.
Good.
You got the volume deadlift, and you got the heavy deadlift.
Yep.
You got the volume squat, you got the heavy squat.
Good.
There's no late day squat. That's just play around day.
Yeah.
And then you got like Sadie's like doing the 4-day cycle over 3 days with the volume heavy 2 upper body lifts. So it's just spread out over 3 days. Hers varies, but I got like 2 bench and only 1 overhead, because I don't love overhead like you do.
I love it. I press every day.
Yeah. So anyway, Sadie's very much like, no. I gotta do Monday. It's gotta be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And like there have been weeks where it's like Monday is really a difficult day for her to lift because she's got in-person school, and then she's working at the snack shack at the pool, and the pool's open now, and then like she might be scheduled for a shift and then whatever, but she's got to lift on Monday. And I'm trying to say like, well, you could actually really do it on like Sunday or Tuesday. Oh no, it's got to be Monday. Yeah, so that's going to be an issue because we're not lifting the same days. I'm sort of like a Monday, Thursday, and she's like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Yeah, so
Good.
But my nephews are down there now trying to figure out where to lift. And there's a starting strength coach down there in Charleston. He's a new guy, Cameron Cox. He's actually also with Barbell Logic.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Awesome. But he's got like a sweet looking garage gym, which is not got open hours. I already asked him.
Couldn't he bend the rules a little bit?
He did, however, give me like a recommendation of a little bit closer gym than the one that I went to like the other year. Cool. But anyway, awesome. I'll let you know.
Well, enjoy. Yeah, definitely. And have fun at the down Charleston. We'll be back in a couple weeks then. I don't know what the topic's going to be. Again, it'll be a surprise. It'll be a surprise to you. It'll be a surprise to us. We're getting into summer now. Charm City Strong Woman registration's going well. Almost 40 women are registered. Sponsorships are coming in. Once I have our fundraising page up in a couple weeks, probably in the middle of July or so, probably a month from now, we will let you know. So anybody who wants to contribute to our fundraising page can do so. Again, Charm City Strong Woman is on September 12th this year, which is also Diego's birthday.
Oh, wait, what is it? September 12th?
September 12th. So it's not the big one yet. That's next year.
Because
this one is still just a year shy.
You guys always do this September 12th.
We always do it the weekend of around his birthday. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wait, Emily, it's the weekend before the county fair this year. That's exciting.
So you can come.
I can come.
Good. You could be one of our volunteers. No, you can come just to watch. But yeah, so September 12th, and once we have the fundraising page, we'll get that out to all of you, and I'll have a link to it on our podcast. And as always, you can find me at Emily@5by3.com, and you can find Rebecca at
CornerstoneStrengthMaryland.com.
So thanks very much, everyone. And we'll be back in a couple weeks with our next podcast. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Bye.
See ya. Take care.
Thanks for listening to 5x3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5x3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.